Okay. So I was saying, the biggest thing is to tailor it to whoever is there just because there's a lot of in and out. And so we don't want to like spend time on something that maybe you guys already know or jump ahead when you don't know what the basic information is. So it's going to be very tailored to you guys who are here. And yeah, just so we can get the most and so you guys can benefit because obviously you took the time out of your day to do this. So um yeah. In case you are in my lesson for the first time, my name is Kute Mama Safwa. I'm in the New Season Youth Program. I'm an undergrad student at Zero University of Louisiana. I'm a chemistry major. Um, and yeah, we have a team of about 6 tutors and we take turns. Right now it's like in the heat of the semester because this is like midterm week that we're just getting out of. So it's been very unstable for the tutors. So we find that like I think last week there was no lesson because everyone was sick. So anyway, as much as we can, we have these lessons. And the goal of these lessons is not to replace studying at all because studying is really important and practice is really important for the SAT. But the goal is just to like supplement what you're already doing and just like help maybe if you're having any difficulties in any areas. So you find that even the approach of teaching isn't more like, oh, let's go through the book and like let's go through this section in the book. It's more like let's practice more because we know you guys have the books. You guys can read the books, on your own time, and I hope we're already doing that. But yeah, you guys can read the books anytime you want. But the goal is just to give you tips from our experience as tutors, because of course, to be here, we had to take the SAT. Most of us had to take the SAT. Um, and yeah, so it's very action oriented. And the section that I'm in charge of is the reading section. I know many people don't like it. But the main goal again is to make sure that we're having the realistic tips because you guys already have the book. But how do you go beyond that? How do you apply the different things that you're learning? So yeah, the new SAT is very different. I'm going to share my screen in a second. But the new SAT is very different. I don't know, are any of us familiar with the old format of the SAT? And you can like type in the chat if you don't feel comfortable saying or unmute. But are we familiar or do we even know that there's been a change in the SAT? Does anyone know?
Good afternoon. No.
I saw someone unmute, but I couldn't hear.
Good afternoon. No.
Oh, you were saying, I just realized that my headphones have been in this whole time. My apologies. But you were saying?
I was saying I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm really glad that we're here because that's so important. It's really important because the textbooks were made with the old format of the SAT in mind. And like most of the practice that they have is based on the old format of the SAT. So it's really important to use new material. I don't know. I'm not really up to date with this stuff. I'm not sure if any books have been published based on the new format of the SAT. But the biggest thing is that even as you read, that information is very relevant when they tell you, oh, this is what the main idea is and all the different things. It's very relevant. But the main thing is there's a lot of change in the format. So even as you practice, be careful. Like you don't want to waste your time learning something that would only be relevant on the old format of ACT. So yeah, so I'm going to keep my eyes on the chat. So if at any point you have a question or an addition, anything, I know why the screen looks like that. But yeah, if at any point you have anything that you want to add, feel free to interrupt me. I love it when you guys are active because like I said, that's the way we get the most that we can out of the session. Um, so yeah. Don't know why the screen looks like that. But yeah, so the old SAT would have a long passage, maybe like 95 lines-ish. It would have a very long passage, and then you have like 10 questions on that passage. So you had to read a whole chunk of passage for you to get to the questions, and you would be answering multiple questions per passage. But this new format, you can see already that it's like a very short passage, and then you have a question on the passage. So you don't have to do as much reading in the new format. And this is for reading. There's some changes to writing as well. In fact, this is now, so the reading and writing section used to be separate, but now we have reading and writing. So it's combined into one section, and they won't tell you like, oh, this is a reading question, or this is a writing question. So you have to know, and you have to be able to tell the difference, because the approach for reading and writing is going to be different. You can't just like go through the questions anyhow. You have to know what type of question is it, and what am I going to do on this specific question. That's really, really important. Okay, so yeah, so that was the biggest thing, knowing that there's a new format of the SAT. And then I assume for us to all be here, we are in the WhatsApp group. If you're not in the WhatsApp group, you can privately message me your number and I will add you. But in the WhatsApp group, we have a Google Drive folder that has a lot of material. So it has the textbooks, it has the practice tests, both the old and the new. And I think for the one that would be relevant for you to go through the old practice test would be math, because math is very consistent throughout. And even for writing, maybe, because it doesn't require much reading. But for the reading, I really recommend practicing using the new one because it's very different. The concepts are the same, but the skills that you need also become a little bit different, because now you're dealing with a short passage compared to a long passage. And so what we noticed on the new SAT is that it has a lot of main idea questions or big idea questions, and it has inference questions as well, little bit, and then it has a lot of function questions and a lot of command of evidence questions. And this is very different because the old format had a lot of variety in questions, but the new format doesn't have as much. So even as we go through the sessions, we'll focus on the big idea, we'll focus on function, and then we'll focus on command of evidence. Everything else is kind of very small, so we can leave it for the end or close to the end. So I'm curious to know, for us who are in here, are we taking, well, multiple questions anyway. But the point is, when are you planning on taking the SAT, or have you taken it before? Are you just starting out? Are you just starting to study? Have you studied it before? Like, where are we in the process? And again, you can type in the chat if you don't feel comfortable speaking, but you can also unmute. Just starting? Okay. What of the others? Where are we? Have we taken it before? Have we already started studying? Are we practicing? Where are we in the process? Just starting? Okay. Starting? Okay, December. That sounds like a good timeline. Okay. I'm waiting for the others because I just want to know how, if everyone is starting, then I can be more detailed. But if we have someone who's already, in the process, and I can find a balance in between. So speak now or forever hold your peace. Anyone who's not starting? Okay, so because the people who responded are starting, then we're going to be very basic in how we go through everything. Okay, so we've already gone through, like I said, the biggest thing is knowing that there's been a redesign in the SAT. Don't worry about the old one. I'm just saying that because, like I said, the textbooks kind of give you advice based on the old SAT. So just watch out for that as you study and as you practice. Be sure that you practice as much as you can on the new format of the SAT tests. And as always, the good thing about the College Board is when they give you practice tests like this, they also give you the answer key. I really don't like how it looks. Okay, anyway. They also give you the answer key. Now let me reshare my screen. But yeah, the goodness about the College Board is they don't just give you the question papers and the answers. They'll explain why the answer is the answer, and they'll walk you through why the answers are wrong. And that's really important. The biggest thing about the SAT, and the more that you come to the sessions with me, I'll keep emphasizing and emphasizing, because it's really important to know that the SAT is a standardized exam. What that means is that you have multiple people from all around the world taking it. And the goal of this exam is to be fair for everyone. So that means that every question should have one correct answer that should be objective. And that's really important. So I use the chat a lot. I'll be typing in the chat. So the biggest thing is that the SAT is standardized. And this applies to all the sections that you go through, right? It's a standard exam. It means there shouldn't be it shouldn't favor anyone. It shouldn't be to a point where, oh, maybe there are two answers, but if you think this way, you can pick this one. If you think this way, it's supposed to be completely objective. So that means every single question should have one correct answer. And that's it. Like there should be no room for debate, no exceptions to the rules, nothing like that. Whatever they say is what they say. And so this means that the rules of the SAT have to be they have to be consistent. So let's say SAT rules have to be consistent, right? So it means that if they tell you, like for the writing section, they'll tell you, oh, according to the SAT, shorter is better. And that's it. Like there should be no exceptions, no, like maybe sometimes by the way, because it's supposed to be standard for every person. And most people get it wrong in reading because you know how reading is. When you read a comprehension, I don't know, exam or something, we're very used to interpreting things based on how we understand them. And that's very subjective, by the way, right? Because all of us in this room can read the same passage and we can come up with a different conclusion, right? So this means that you don't have to go beyond what you've been given in the passage, right? The SAT reading, for it to be objective, it's supposed to have standard rules and standard answers. So it means that your biggest goal in the reading is to see the concepts the way the College Board sees them. And that's really important because, like I said, it has to be very objective. So see everything the way the College Board sees it. So if they tell you, oh, what's the function of this? You're not thinking about function the way you understand function. You're thinking of function the way the SAT understands function because that's what makes them choose the right answer, which has to be the right answer all the time. Anyway, I've emphasized this enough, but the point is you really have to see things the way the College Board sees them. And one thing that can help you, like I mentioned, is going through, when you practice an exam, go through the answer key as well. Like see, okay, what was their explanation for why the answer was correct or why the answer was wrong? Because then you start thinking like them. And that's what you need to do for you to pick the answers that they chose in the exam, if that makes sense. So we're going to go through the different topics. Like I said, there's I don't know if I said it already. Anyway, there's a cheat sheet amongst the different materials in the SAT writing. I mean, the SAT group, there's a lot of materials in there. And these cheat sheets are just like a summary of the main things that you need to know. This is what I used when I was taking the SAT, and it was really helpful to like summarize the points and it was just like a summary. So I still read the books, I still practiced separately, but this was just like a quick way to remember everything that's important to what I'm supposed to know. So I advise going through, especially the writing and the math. And then reading is also really helpful to help you see what the questions are and what's the best approach to find the answers to those questions. So again, I'm not discouraging reading the book. This is just a supplement to the book. So for today, we'll look at the big idea. It has different names. So I'll put them all in the chat. There's the big idea, there's the central claim. So central claim. Sometimes it's called the main idea. Oh yes. So the notes are in the group. In the description of the group, you find a Google Drive folder and it has everything in there. So don't worry about that. It's already in the group. And I'll emphasize that again just in case other people need the notes as well. But yeah, so it's called different things. It's called the big idea, the central claim, the main idea, but you get the point. It's like the big picture that you're supposed to get from reading a passage, right? Yeah, so that's what the main idea is. And you'll find that most of the questions in most of the papers are main idea. So what I'm saying is this may be the most important thing for you to know when you're going through SAT reading. And I say that because knowing the main idea is not only useful when they ask you for it, it's also useful to just in general understand anything. So if they give you a passage, if you're able to know what the main idea is, it will also help you with the other questions that you are going through. So what we're learning today isn't just finding the answer to main idea questions. We're learning how to understand the passage and how to come up with the answer to the questions that they ask, even if they're not asking you for the main idea, right? So we're going to redefine the main idea based on how the College Board understands the main idea. So when you see it, when you see big idea, it's easy to kind of like think about it as, oh, how do I summarize this passage? Like if someone was to ask me, oh, what did you learn today? And I went through just like a 1 hour lecture, you know. If I ask you what was the big idea, you probably give me like 7 sentences of, oh, we talked about the functions, then we talked about the structures, then we talked about this and this and this and this, and that was the big idea, right? So that's not how the College Board would give you an answer to a big idea question. So it's not a summary, right? You're not giving me like everything that you've heard in different versions and in the headings, and if that makes sense. You're not summarizing every single thing that you have read through, but rather it's very, very specific. And this defines it right here. It's the topic plus the so what. And this is all that you need to know for you to come up with the main point. So never forget it. It's the topic plus the so what. So we're going to break it down. What's the topic? And it's already here. The topic is the most frequently used word in the passage. So if I'm telling you about about phones, and I'm like, oh, phones are very nice. I got a phone when I was 10. I didn't do that anyway. But yeah, I got a phone when I was 10, and that phone helped me, you know, everything. If I ask you what's the topic, it's obviously the phone. So it's what's being talked about, and it's going to appear more frequently in the passage. Again, this definition would help you a lot more if you're talking about like a very long passage, because then you can just like skim through and be like, okay, everything was talking about this thing. Okay. But since it's very short, right? The topic, I wouldn't say that this would be the best way to find the topic. So obviously, yes, it's what's being talked about. I would say it's like, think of it as what it is. It's the subject. So what is being talked about, right? It might not appear as often as it would in a long passage, but it's just what's being talked about or the object that's being talked about. Yes. So practice, we'll go through some questions together. But the biggest thing is you need to figure out what the subject is. And if I was to tell you, okay, Blessing, write me a composition on yourself. You won't just start like, oh, yesterday I went to the market. Yesterday I did this, right? You would first of all tell me who you are. Oh, my name is Blessing, and I do this and this and this, and I like this and I do this. You know, you have to start from somewhere, and that's how passages are going to be. So most of the times, the topic will be in the introduction, and I'll edit this and say it would be this is actually a good place. So the topic would be in the very beginning because you're introducing what you're talking about. So if you're looking for the topic, most likely, especially because the passage is so small, I would say look at the first sentence. Because there's no room to like dilly-dally. Like it's such a short passage, they have to give you the topic in the first sentence. And most likely the first sentence will be like the introduction to the topic, and then the passage keeps going throughout. So you'll be able to see like, okay, what's in the first sentence? How does it carry on through the rest of the passage? So first of all, you need to find the topic, right? What is being talked about and what's being introduced so that everything that's said is about that one thing. So find the topic. And then the next part, because you don't just end on the topic, because how many things can be said about the topic? If I tell you, okay, I'm talking about phones, I can talk about how phones are nice. I can talk about how phones are built. I can talk about so many aspects of a phone. So how do you narrow it down? That's the so what. So every time you ask for the main idea, it's the topic plus the so what. So what is being talked about and what is being said about it? And this is a very, very short summary. So if I tell you, oh yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, so if I tell you, I grew up, I don't know, I grew up in Zambia, by the way, but yeah, I grew up in Zambia, and I was, well, like, since I was young, I've really liked cats, and like, oh yeah, so my love for cats came from this, and my love for cats is because I don't like cats, by the way, but yeah, my love for cats came from, I don't know, when I was young, I watched this show about a cat and blah blah blah. So if I ask you, okay, tell me what the main idea is from that passage, you're not going to tell me like, oh, she watched the show when she was young. That wasn't the topic. I was using that as an example to illustrate how much I love cats and why I love cats. So you get it. It's easy to get lost in the details of a passage, but you have to have like a bird's eye view. So like look at everything, and like if you were to describe that in a sentence, right? It's not a summary. So you're not saying, oh, she talked about the love for shows and blah blah blah. It's more like, okay, what's the goal of everything that she said? So that's a so what. Like she's talked about phones, but so what? What am I supposed to get out of this, right? It's that, oh, phones are nice, right? So even though I used like 7 different examples of scenarios, the big thing that you got out of it was that phones are nice, right? So that's the biggest thing. And like I said, we're going to practice through it and like break down how to get to it. But even as you read, it's easy to read through the passage. Like if you're reading through a passage and looking for the main idea, you will find it. It's not hard. And the more that you practice, it becomes like the first thing that you do. You're like, okay, what's the topic? And as you're reading through, you're like, okay, what's the so what? Okay, what's being said? So that as you read through the sentences, you're kind of like tying it together. Like, oh, what does this do in relation to the topic? Or it tells me that it's good. What does this do in relation to the topic? Or it also says it's good, even though it says it's in a different way. And you're able to tie everything together and get what the main idea is. So many things have been said, but the biggest thing is you have to find what the topic is and then what's being said about the topic. So that as you're reading through, you're not trying to understand every single detail, because you don't even have to understand every single detail to answer a question. The biggest thing is, are you able to see what the goal of the writing is? Yeah, it's nice. I like thinking of passages as debates, because that's what they are. It's like the author trying to convince you about something. And so they're telling you like 5 different sentences, proposing, opposing the motion. I don't know how many of us are in debate, but yeah, they're giving you like all these sentences, proposing and opposing the motion. But what's the main idea? The motion. Everything that they said is to lead you to conclude that that's the motion that was like, right or wrong based on which side they're on. So really you have to like take a step back and be able to see like what's the main thing that the author wants me to get? What's the topic? What is he or she saying about it? And so, like I said, knowing the main idea is not only important for going through questions when they ask you for it, it just helps you to understand the passage in general. And this can help you, especially we look at function the next time we have a reading class, but especially for function, it's really directly tied to the main idea. So what I'm saying is knowing the main idea is really important, and building a habit of looking for the main idea will help you understand basically any passage that you read. And this is even outside the SAT. It's just really good to be able to like tie everything and read everything in context. Yeah. So any questions up to here? Okay, great. I think I've said all there is to say about the main idea. I want us to spend more time on practice. And I don't know if we've started practicing already, but that's so important. It's really important that you practice, because the SAT is a skills test. It's not really, not even really, it's not a knowledge test. Even if someone knows what the passage is about, if they don't know what the main idea is, they can't find the answer to the question, right? So it's not a knowledge exam. It's really a skills exam. You have to build up the skill of finding, like what we did today, you have to build up the skill of finding the main idea. And there are different types of passages. Sometimes it's social studies, sometimes it's science, sometimes it's literature. And the more that you practice, you'll be able to find the main idea on basically any type of passage. But you have to practice. Like practice is so, so important. I can't stress that enough. So we're going to practice. And the biggest thing when you get to the questions in the new format is what section is the question from? And I say this because, like I said, reading and writing have now been combined, right? And so normally in the old SAT, you would have the reading section, the writing section, then the math, 2 math sections, calculator and no calculator. So we have the reading section, which is very much comprehension, like what we did, comprehension. They give you a passage, find the answer to this question. We have writing, which is very grammar based. It's like, oh, correct the sentence, what punctuation, what's the word choice. So it's not even tied to like, oh, understand the passage. It's just grammar. It's a grammar exam. And so you need to differentiate between that, the reading and the writing. And it's very easy because you can easily tell like if they're asking you for writing. So it's more so, is it writing? If it's not, it's reading. So if you look at question 1, it asks you which choice completes the text with the most logical, precise word or phrase. This is very grammar based. It's not asking you, what did this person mean when they said this in the passage? It's just grammar. Second question, and the question is always like, close to the multiple choice. So it asks you complete with the most logical, same thing. And it seems like most of the writing questions will have that exact prompt for the question, logical word or phrase, logical word or phrase. So whenever you see that, it's a clue that it's a writing question. So all of these 1 to 6 are writing. But if we go to 7, 7 asks us for the main purpose of the text. So we're going to practice. So the first question will be us going through together and figuring out what the main purpose is. The next one will be practice for you guys. Okay, So the first thing is, so we've identified what section. So we know that because it's not asking us for the logical, precise word or phrase, it's not writing, it's reading. But now when you get through reading, what we did today was one specific type of question in the reading section, right? So it means that you also have to know what question is it, because each question is different. And like I said, you have to know, how does the College Board define like the specific type of question that you're reading. So in this one, it asks us which choice best states the main purpose of the text, which is what we just learned, right? They're asking you directly, what is the main purpose? So, and it's important to read the question first so that you know what type of question it is. Because if you just read the passage and then read the question, then you have to go back to the passage and then now look for the answer. So if you read the question first, even the first time around that you're reading the passage, you're already looking for the answer. And you can easily find it that way, right? So we know being asked for the main purpose of the text. So I'm going to practice and go through the passage and see what the main purpose is. So we're going to read through it. And the biggest thing that helps me is kind of like connecting as I go. So I'm not like spending 2 minutes analyzing, like, in between. What I'm doing is more so kind of connecting and seeing what's the connection between the two sentences. And that helps me to see like what's the so what of the passage. Okay, so we're going to read through it. First sentence. In 2007, computer scientist Louis von Ahn was working on converting printed books into a digital format project. Okay. Second sentence, he found some words that were distorted enough that digital scanners couldn't recognize them, but most humans could easily read them. So describing the project more. Okay. Next sentence, based on that finding, Von Ahn invented a simple security test to keep automated bots out of websites. Okay, so what came out of that project? Because we know from the first sentence, it's a project, right? Okay. And then the first version of the reCAPTCHA test asked some users, to type one unknown word and one of the many words scanners couldn't recognize. Okay, so it's like more explanation on the test. Okay. Correct answers proved the users were humans and added data to the book digitizing project. Okay. So it seems like, and that's the biggest thing for me, is answer first. Come up with the answer before you go through the questions, or at least a version of some kind. Like if you were to answer it in your own words, how would you say it? And that will really help you. One, because this is multiple choice, of course, and two, because the College Board it's not like they don't want it to be such an easy test that everyone passes it. So this means that they don't have, you know how it is when you're in like primary school and then they're giving you A, B, C, and D, and like D doesn't even make sense. You even know it's not the answer. Like it's like, oh, they're asking you 2 plus 2, 5, and then D is like ice cream. Like you even know it's wrong. The College Board is not like that. Like all the answers are meant to mislead you in some way. Like some of the answers will have some element of truth to them. Some of them are true, but don't answer the question. So the point is, it might be your downfall if you start looking through the answers, because then they can convince you like, oh, maybe D is the answer, even though it's not, right? And like we said, there'll be always one answer to every question. So if you come up with your answer first, you kind of already have an idea of what you're looking for, and that can help you like not be misled by the answers that are maybe partially correct and stuff. Yeah, so maybe sometimes you can read through and you're blank. In that case, you have no choice but to use the elimination method. But as much as you can, come up with an answer. And this goes for all the sections. Come up with an answer first so that you're not misled by the other options that are definitely wrong. Okay, so if we went through this, everything has been talking about this book digitizing project and how it came about. So if we go through the answers, A says to discuss Von Ahn's invention of reCAPTCHA. I would say that kind of accurately says what it was. Okay, let's read B. B says to explain how digital scanners work. C says to call attention to Von Ahn's book digitizing project. And D says to indicate how popular reCAPTCHA is. The biggest thing, first of all, I'm curious to know what you guys think. Which one do you think would be your answer? And you can type in the chat or say it out loud, but which one are you leaning more towards? Or is there any answer that you know is okay, I see an A, great. Or is if you're not really sure, is there any answer that you think is definitely wrong? Like any answer that you eliminated from the go? So I can see some A's. Okay. Okay, so I'll take it we are all for A. Okay. And I'm also very much for A. And the biggest thing that made us go for A, I think, is that we were able to summarize what the passage was talking about and already have a clue. Because if you look at B, okay, it says to explain how digital scanners work. It's not something that's not even been mentioned, right? Which part was that? He was converting, okay. There's this part where it says, oh, digital scanners couldn't recognize them. So there's something about digital scanners, and like it's easy to be misled and like see, he was talking about using the digital scanners for recapture and things like that. So the point is B is in the passage, like they mentioned digital scanners, but at no point did they explain how they work. Right. So first of all, B is just wrong. And it's important to know how does the College Board try to mislead you, right? Sometimes they'll have answers that are factually wrong. B is one of those because the passage doesn't explain how the scanners work. All it says was that, oh, they couldn't recognize the words, humans couldn't read them and stuff. And don't try to justify any answer because that's also some people's downfall. It can be like, oh, but then this point why it said the version, maybe that could also be seen. Like, no, you won't have to justify the answer. The correct answer is just correct. So that's the first way they'll try to mislead you. Something that's just factually wrong. The passage didn't even do that. Even though it mentioned digital scanners, that was just factually wrong. Let's look at C. It says to call attention to Von Ann's book digitizing project. Now it's easy to read this passage and be like, oh, maybe that's why this passage was written. Like, oh, so this would be an answer of going too far, right? Because you can be like, oh, this passage was talking about how he invented it, how well it works. Yeah, I can see how it's calling attention, but it has to be word for word. If C was the answer, the passage would outright say like, oh, this I'm calling attention to this project. This project is amazing. Everyone should use it. Let's use reCAPTCHA. You know what I'm saying? Like you won't have to go beyond and infer too far based on what you've been given. So C is just, it's easy for someone to be like, oh, I can see how this would do that and pick it. But no, the passage didn't outright say it. That's not the answer. And that's also one of the biggest things about the reading section is that what you know is what the passage is telling you. At no point do you have to use outside knowledge. And that's very comforting for me because I'm not a reader. There are topics that I know very little about, but I'm still able to do on the SAT because it doesn't require me to know anything. What I know is what they've taught me, right? So C is an example of going too far. Then D says to indicate how popular reCAPTCHA is. I think this is just off because nothing, or I'd say it's off topic a little bit, but also factually wrong because nothing talks about how popular it is. It just says, oh, this first version, okay, and then it did this. It doesn't talk about the popularity of reCAPTCHA, so it's just off. Yeah. So we chose A and we already discussed it. We said because everything that's talked about is about how that's A is just the answer. That's all I can say, right? Because we know what the passage was saying, we're able to summarize it. Everything else is either off too far or just off topic. But we were able to not even be misled. We didn't even waste time trying to justify because we already knew what the answer was. So you coming up with the answer beforehand saves you time and also just helps you find the answer. Yeah. So any questions on this? Yes, Blessing, did you have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah.
Ma'am, sorry. Yeah, I just want to ask what, like, for example, what's the maximum time I must spend on a question?
Okay. I would say there's no fixed I won't tell you like, oh, 2 minutes or 7 minutes. There's not really like a fixed amount of time that you should spend on your question. And some questions will take you longer than others also. So it's not like I won't tell you that. But one of the things that helps is giving yourself the maximum amount of time you should spend on a question, like based on the sections and the time that you'll be given. Um, and this section, I don't believe it tells you how long the duration is. Actually, give me 1 second. Let me just look that up. Because I know on the old SAT, it was 60 minutes, I believe. So let's see, new SAT reading and writing section duration. Okay, so it says it's 64 minutes. let's see. Oh, each section. Okay. So it says each section is 32 and you have 27 questions. So if we divide 32 by 27, it's like a minute and some change. So I would say your goal should be to be under a minute. But the fact is sometimes some questions will take you, like, especially for the writing section, that one goes by really quick. And this is a combination. So sometimes it take you like seconds to go through one question and you have extra time for some of the other questions. So I will say I think your goal should just be to be as fast as you can, but also keep in mind, like if you in your mind you're like, I shouldn't spend more than a minute on this, then it will help you be faster. But it's not that, anyway, I think what I've said is already clear. Like I can't tell you like use this duration, but I can say just be as fast as you can because you will be faster on some and not so fast on the others. But also keep in mind, like I don't want to spend more than a minute on this question. Another thing to keep in mind is that every question has equal points. It's not like um oh, if I answer question 22, I'll have more points. So sometimes it's okay to skip and come back if you're okay with that. I know some people don't like doing that, and that's fine. But if you can, skip it because you might answer 5 questions in the time that you would have spent on that one question for the same amount, the same number of points. So just be as fast as you can. And yeah, maybe keep in mind the minute that you like officially on paper have for each question. Yeah. Thank you for that question. Any more questions? Okay. So we answered question 7, and it only took us long because I was like taking time to explain. But the biggest thing is you kind of like summarizing everything and putting it back should be pretty quick because you're doing it in your brain as you. Okay, so we're going to do question 8 and we'll read it through together, analyze it together, but now it will be you guys to come up with what your answer is, which you already did, but this time I won't have any input on it. Okay, so question 8 has an introduction at the top. Oh, first of all, this is function. I already made a mistake of what I told you not to do. I told you to read the question first, which I didn't do, right? So this is actually function and not main idea. So function has a whole different approach. And we won't do that today. We'll do that the next time. And question 9 is function. It asks you, right, state the function. Question 10 is literal comprehension. It just asks you what is true. So yeah, state the passage. Question 11 asks you to state the main purpose. Okay. And this one also has a title. Another important thing is that the College Board won't give you irrelevant information. Whatever they give you is important. It's there for a reason. So always read the introduction because it will help you in some way to get to the answer. So we're going to read it through, like I said. This is a literature passage, so it's going to be slightly different from the one that we read, but the same concept applies. The main idea is the topic plus the so what. So the title says, the following text is from Maggie Pogue Johnson's 1910 poem, Poet of Our Race. In this poem, the speaker is addressing Paul Laurence Dunbar, a Black author. Okay, so I think this is the important part, the fact that this is being addressed to someone. So I'm going to read it through. It says, thou, with stroke of mighty pen, hast told of joy and mirth, and read the hearts and souls of men as cradles from their birth. The language of the flowers, thou hast read them all, and in the little brook responded to thy call. So since we're doing this one together, if I was to read this through and kind of summarize it in a way, I know it's about a person. We know he's an author. That's also important. So we know when it says stroke of pen, it's his writing. And it's talking about what he's told, right? He's told of joy. He's read the hearts. He's cradled the language. He's read them all, the little book. So basically, I would say like he has a deep understanding and he writes about so many things out in there. So at least I have kind of like a clue, right? And we're going to read through the options. And this time I'll just read through and see what you guys think. So A says, to praise a certain writer for being especially perceptive regarding people and nature. B, to establish that a certain writer has read extensively about a variety of topics. C, to call attention to a certain writer's careful and elaborately detailed writing process. D, to recount fond memories of an afternoon spent in nature with a certain writer. So what do we think? A, B, C, or D? And also if you eliminate, like either you can tell me if you think one is the answer, or you can let me know if you know one is definitely wrong. So feel free to type in the chat or to speak. Okay, I see A. Another A. Great. What of the rest of us? What do we think? Okay, I'll take it we're all for A. And I definitely agree. And I think us reading through the passage and the title was very instrumental in that, because I can definitely see how someone can be misled and go for B, C, or D. So I think A kind of explains itself, right? We talked about, we know it's being addressed to an author, and everything is about what he's done. He's told, he's read, he's cradled, the language, he's read them all, yes. So B, let's go through what's wrong with B. B says to establish that a certain writer has read extensively about a variety of topics. We know, excuse me, we know it's wrong because the part that talks about reading isn't talking about reading literally, right? Because if we go through, it says it's his pen. He's told with his pen. He's read the hearts, and he's like, it's not literally writing, reading about topics. It's about how when he's writing, he's able to like describe, which goes to him being perceptive, right? He's able to describe all of those things. So B is wrong because it's factually wrong. Yeah. C says to call attention to a certain writer's careful and elaborately detailed writing process. This is off because nothing is talked. We're not talking about the process by which he writes. But then if you don't understand the passage, it's easy to be like, oh, the brook. Well, maybe that's why he writes, or I don't know, stroke of mighty pen. But nothing is said about the process by which he writes the things that he writes. So C is just off topic. D says to recount fond memories of an afternoon spent in nature with a certain writer. I think D would come from you not reading the title. Because from the title, we know that the poem is being told to, like, it's being addressed to him. It's not like a memory or something. So I think D would come from not having context of who this is being addressed to or something like that. But yeah, I think A is clearly our answer. Do we have any questions on this one? Okay, so we're going to practice one more. Let's see. 13 would be command of evidence, asking you to support a claim. I think the rest should be writing. Yes. Okay, now I see. Yeah. The last question is writing. And yeah, this should all be writing. So we're going to look at the second module. The first, it seems like a pattern that the first 6 are writing and then it goes into, yeah, this time 7 is also writing. So 8 is the main purpose. So we've read through the question, we know what it is. So again, title is important. So it says the following text is from Charlotte Brondt's 1847 novel Jane Eyre. Jane works as a governess at Thornfield Hall. So I'm going to read it through without the analysis and have you guys do that. And I'll read through the answers and then you can let me know what you think. So it says, I went on my day's business tranquilly, but ever and anon vague suggestions kept wandering across my brain of reasons why I should quit Thornfield. And I kept involuntarily framing advertisements and pondering conjectures about new situations. These situations I did not think to check. They might germinate and bear fruit if they could. Which choice best states the main purpose? So A, to convey a contrast between Jane's outward calmness and inward restlessness, internal, sorry. B, to emphasize Jane's loyalty to the people she works for at Thornfield Hall. C, to demonstrate that Jane finds the situation both challenging and deeply fulfilling. D, to describe Jane's determination to secure employment outside of Thornfield Hall. So what do we think? A, B, C, or D? And again, if you eliminate one of them, you can also let me know. Okay, I see a B. What do we think? Maybe A? Okay. Did you eliminate any of them? Well, I guess for you to pick, you did eliminate. Yeah. What of the others? We've been quiet. What do we think? Okay, I hope we are coming up with the answers in our minds because this is definitely a good place to practice and talk through our thought processes. So yeah, does anyone feel comfortable defending their answer?
I just answered. I don't even know.
Okay. No, I'm glad you were able to choose one. That's good. So we're going to go through them and see and compare them to the passage. So first of all, this is different because it's not your typical scientific passage or social studies passage. This is a literature, so it's more of a story. And so it's not really as straightforward as others where it's like, oh, like the recapture one, where it's like, oh, this is recapture, we made it this way, blah, blah, blah. This one is just a story, and you have to go through the lines and be able to see like what's the main idea of this passage. So let's go through it sentence by sentence and see what we come up with. So it says, I went on my day's business tranquilly. So we know that this is Jane and she's working at Thornfield Hall. So this is Jane. So first of all, peaceful, okay? But ever and anon vague suggestions kept wandering across my brain of reasons why I should quit Thornfield. So peaceful but wandering, okay. And I kept involuntarily framing advertisements and pondering conjectures about new situations. So she kept imagining what it would be like to leave, okay? And then these thoughts I did not think to check. They might germinate and bear fruit if they could. So basically, the thoughts are happening. Let's see, these thoughts I did not think to check. They might germinate and bear fruit if they could. So she's letting herself think about everything. So the main thing that this passage is saying is she's peaceful during the day. Okay, great. I see. She's calm yet on the inside she's wondering what to do. Yes. So that's exactly what A says, right? We know that the first part is, oh, she was tranquilly going about her day. Everything else is like she was wondering what it would be like to leave. And this was all involuntary, right? So we know that there's a contrast between how she's calm on the outside and how on the inside so many things are happening, and different things are going that way. So let's go through B. It says, to emphasize Jane's loyalty to the people she works for at Thornfield Hall. So this would be an example of going too far. So I can see how this passage can be interpreted as that because it's like, oh yeah, like she's peaceful and she wants to leave, but she's not leaving. But the passage doesn't say that she's loyal. So again, it's more that the passage didn't directly tell you what B is saying. So it might possibly be correct, but not based on the passage that we've been given. Then if we go through C, it says to demonstrate that Jane finds a situation both challenging and deeply fulfilling. So first of all, nothing says that she was deeply fulfilled. And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. This would be like factually wrong based on the passage. And nothing also says it was challenging. It just says she wanted to leave. We don't know why she wanted to leave. And D says to describe Jane's determination to secure employment outside of Thornfield Hall. This is factually wrong because it says this, it's just thoughts. She was thinking, the thoughts might germinate, but we haven't been told that they germinated. So yeah, any questions on this one? Okay, great. So I'm glad you guys were taking part. That was good. That's a great way to practice. If you're able to question yourself and think through like, why did I think? Yeah, I didn't realize all of them are A's. But yeah, if you're able to question yourself and think through like, why did I choose that answer? You'll be able to go through it really well. So to go through what we learned today, we learned what the main idea is. We learned how it's not only important for questions when they ask you about the main idea. It's important in general just to understand the passage, and that can help you on any question. So I said it's the topic plus the so what, and it's what's being talked about, and it has to be consistent throughout the passage. We looked at a couple of examples, and this showed us perfectly that it's different from literature, it's different when you come to poems, it's kind of different in science passages, but the main thing still applies. You're kind of saying, what am I supposed to get out of this passage? And you're able to summarize that and get your answer. Then we said it's important to read the question first. We said it's important to come up with your answer before you go through the options A, B, C, and D so that you're not misled. And we're able to come up with the answers. So please practice as much as you can. I can't emphasize that enough because practice is what's going to help you to like get these ideas down and be able to be faster. The more that you practice, the faster you become. And also don't just practice and be like, oh, I got 5 out of 5 and walk away. Like you have to study your question paper, right? Sometimes you get answers correct because you just guessed. And then you'll be like, oh, I'm doing well, but you don't even know why you chose that answer, right? So be sure to, like, after you practice through, sit down and be like, okay, why did I choose A? If you got it wrong, why is it wrong? Why did I choose the one that I chose? So that you're always improving. That's how you improve, is that you're questioning yourself and you're able to identify, like, okay, what areas do I need to work on, improve on? And then you can keep on improving like that. So please practice and don't just practice, study what you practice so that you're always getting better. But yeah, any last questions before we end the session? Okay, I'm going to stop.